Today's show is brought to you by BarkBox.com. Get one free extra month of BarkBox at getbarkbox.com/amps.
Neck-throughs, guitars, they're like a guy that won't have a beer with you.
I want to hear what's pushing the notes.
Freddie King and B.B. King, Albert King, and let's not forget Burger King.
I don't want to blow my knuckle out.
Stainless steel is the work of the devil.
These go to 11.
From the East Amplification Tone Labs in Baltimore, Maryland, it's the Amps and Axes Show. With your hosts, Jeff the Godfather of Low Wattage Amps Bober and Mick Marcelino.
Well, good day, Mr. Bober.
Good day to you, Mr. Marcelino.
Hey, man.
It's a wonderful day.
The sun is out.
Yes, it is.
And yes, I apologize if I sound like I'm a little flakum. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's the spring pollen.
Yeah, exactly. It's something that a little bit of rejoicing. we can
yes,
we can finally see the end of the bad winter.
It's a joyful cough.
Yes, it is. Hey, man, look, we can't thank you fans enough, and we're working on just bringing more of this stuff to you. And I know we went off on that little tangent, but we can't. We really cannot thank you enough.
What tangent?
Man.
I didn't hear anything. I didn't hear anything. So yes, we couldn't do it without you and your friends and relatives, past and present, and future. If we're lucky enough, future. So just keep spreading the word.
Yeah, man. And when you do, because we like to feel like we bring a lot of stuff to you. When you tell your friends, man, just go, hey, man, you know what I heard over there? I heard it there first.
That's right. That's in some other thing picked up on it, and but hopefully you heard it here first, and that brings us to today's guest, which is not a first. He's a he was a guest way back early on, and we've brought him back just to see what he's doing again. So we're not going to delve into the the history like we like to do, which I think
I had to sit this one out.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah,
you did sit this one out. Yeah. It's a very good one. So, we're going to come back to our recurring guest. And you're not in it, but that's okay. You're in it in spirit, Mick.
Always.
So we'll come back. We'll find out what he's doing now, what he has done since last he was on, and what he's doing now. And there's some very cool and interesting stuff. English, please. Stuff. So we'll take a break and take a pause for the cause and come back with our guest of the week. Back for a second trip, Mr. Carl Verheyen.
Hey, this is Charlie Starr from Blackberry Smoke, and you are listening to Amps and Axes.
For our listeners only, BarkBox is offering an opportunity to receive one free extra month. What is BarkBox? BarkBox delivers 4 to 6 natural treats and toys curated around a surprise theme each month for your dog. All edibles are made in the USA or Canada, and 100% of the products are tested on their own animals. When you go to order, tell them how big your dog is. Then choose a plan. 1, 6, or 12 months plans are available, and you can cancel at any time. Bark boxes are shipped free on the 15th of each month. And if your dog does not like something in the box, we'll send you something they'll love for free, because they're all about dog happiness. So to receive 1 month free, go to getbarkbox.com/amps. Again, that's getbarkbox.com/amps to receive an extra month of BarkBox for free.
All right, we are back as promised with our guest of the week, because that's what we do around here. We bring you a guest every week. And as mentioned, our guest this week is a return visitor, Mr. Carl Verheyen. Carl, how are you?
I'm doing well, Jeff. Thank you very much. It's good to be back.
Oh, it's good to have you back, man. Good to have you. Yeah, we ran into each other at NAMM, and I said, hey, there's Carl. We should have him back on. So lo and behold, through the magic of technology, you're back on.
Exactly.
we've gotten your whole history before, and we don't have to go into much of anything. I tell you what, you, like I said, I mentioned that you were a prior guest. Actually, last month, it was 3 years ago that you were on the show. Yeah, February of 2015. I did look it up.
Wow, that's been a while. I think I've come out with 2 albums since then.
Wow. Okay, well, let's hear about those. That's a good place to start.
Well, the first thing I did, I was playing. I got a call from Sweetwater, the great big music retail place out in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Sure.
And unbeknownst to me, they had state-of-the-art recording studios there, 3 of them. Ah. And the producer called me out of the blue. I think he got my number from my buddy Stu Ham, the bass player.
Sure.
And Stu was playing in my band at the time, and they called me and said, hey, we do these recording classes where we teach recording and Pro Tools and, miking of instruments, and we limit the class to 20 or 25 people, but we always need a band. Would you like to do it? We like your music. So I came out there and recorded one of my songs and basically did my usual layering and texturing and, brought it all the way to fruition, one of my new songs. Then they called me back a few months later and said, we'd like to do it again with you. And I recorded another one of my songs. Then they said, we'd like to finish this album here. We'd like to do your whole album here.
Wow.
And it was such a blessing because the first thing I said is, I've got 70 guitars and probably 45, 50 amplifiers and hundreds and hundreds of pedals and 2 or 3 racks and, just all the stuff that make me sound like me is in Los Angeles, not Fort Wayne, Indiana. But they say, well, see what would happen. See what it would cost to have your tour manager, your road manager, bring it out. So we rented a Mercedes Sprinter and he pulled a trailer. And we basically drove my stuff across the country twice.
Are you kidding me? Wow.
Yeah, for like 2 weeks at a time. So it was a very involved record. But the way they financed it is getting a sponsorship from the various people that I endorse and microphone companies and Pro Tools, Avid Pro Tools and Telefunken and Royer. And they made a 1-hour documentary about it. The album's called The Grand Design. And the documentary that is now available on YouTube is it's called Grand Designs, the music of Carl Verheyen. And it kind of talks about the recording process and my inspiration for some of the songs. And anyway, that came out, I believe it was 2016. And it did really well. And we did 2 tours behind it. Well, we did 2 European tours and 1 East Coast tour and 1 West Coast U.S. tour. So we did a lot of touring behind that. And then the following year, 2017, I'm going, how do I top that? And I was thinking, that was those songs were really, really, really textured, if you know what I mean. I mean, my thinking is that we've heard everybody shred, in terms of, quote, guitar player records, right? So
sure.
My thinking was that's not what it's really all about anymore. It's about the beautiful layers and textures you can get by different parts and acoustics and mandolins and, I believe that if you play your rhythm guitar parts with one amplifier that has, say, 6 L6 tubes in it, your other part should be in an amplifier with EL84s like an AC30 or maybe EL34s like a Marshall because the harmonics stack up differently. I mean, I get that tweaky into it, and different instruments and different kinds of pickups and 12 strings and, on and on. I really get into that magic texturing and layering of parts. And that's what that album was all about. Very detailed and very in-depth.
I have to hear this album for sure because I'm loving everything you're saying.
Anyway, so then what I plan to do the next year is I plan to make a record that was called Essential Blues and simply take the blues tunes, of which there's pretty much 1 or 2 on every one of my releases going all the way back to 88, goes back 30 years, right?
Wow.
So my plan was to do just make a compilation record of nothing but blues, and maybe go into the studio and record 2 more new ones, so my super fans have to have it, because there's 2 more new tunes. People that want to have the entire discography can't live without that, even though they have all that stuff on other records. But my producer at Sweetwater, my buddy Mark Hornsby, said, the Rolling Stones just made this blues album in 3 days. Why don't you do that live blues album in 3 days? And he told me that last year at NAMM, so NAMM 2017. And I said, well, I don't have 10 or 12 blues tunes written. And he goes, well, you got a month to write them, because I have a free week where we could go in, record it, and mix it, and it's done. And I said, you want me to sing and play live at the same time when I'm so used to overdubbing the vocals long after I've got everything done? He goes, yeah, this is going to be a live record. You're going to sing, you're going to play, and all the solos are going down live. No overdubs.
No pressure at all there.
Yeah,
None
so
whatsoever.
I had a month to get it together, and I thought about it a lot. I mean, obviously, it's thinking about it, and then you start playing. But I realized, well, I love the Delta blues. I love the Piedmont blues from the Eastern Appalachians. I love the Chicago blues, the Texas blues. I'm a big fan of jazz blues. I love country blues. And I love the British blues guys, like Peter Green and Clapton and all those guys. So I said, why don't I try to, I'll still call the record Essential Blues, but I'll try to put all those styles to work, in this record. And some R&B type blues, like a Sam and Dave tune, a Ray Charles tune, a Peter Green tune, some old Delta stuff, and it was really, really fun to do it, because we showed up around 2 p.m. on Monday, and by noon on Wednesday we were done. It was finished, and
my
it's a
God.
lot, and there's no real fixes. I did, as I'm singing and playing. Sometimes I play intricate guitar parts, so I look down, so the vocal wasn't as present when I'm looking down, singing and playing something real difficult. So I had to go back in and just fix a few lines of vocals where the level wasn't there. Mm-hmm. But that was it, man. We did the record in 3 days, and it's been selling like crazy. And I actually came out with vinyl too this time.
Oh,
it came out on vinyl.
Well, yeah, old school blues belongs on vinyl. So eventually you get some snap,
really
crackle, pops
sound.
in it.
You don't hear the delays fading out, like at the end of the song, delays or reverb. Those tails are shortened a little bit on vinyl, but the sound is so rich. It was really, and we did it on that 180 gram, audiophile quality vinyl, and they pressed it up in England, which was really cool. And when I went on the road for this record, I guess I did an entire Italian and French festival tour over the summer. But the real road trip was another month in Europe and up and down the California coast. That's all I've done so far, because the record only came out in September of last year. So it was amazing how much the vinyl was selling on the road.
More and more people are getting into it nowadays, and you pressed it on quality vinyl, so that's it's going to last a little longer. It's probably going to sound a little better. Really, really interesting that you say what you said about the tails, like the reverbs and delays. The tails just kind of fade a little quicker on vinyl. That's really interesting. You would never even think of it. You just if you know what you've recorded, then you hear it. You obviously experience it. But
the only way I found out is we were in the studio I just went back again to Sweetwater a couple weeks ago and played on the, I guess she's the runner-up of The Voice. They're making her album there.
Wow.
Her name is Addison Agan, and they asked me to fly back, and they flew me back, and I played on 3 of her tunes. And while I was there in the studio, they put the vinyl on, queued it up, and then started the CD, and we could check back and forth. And it was really different, the analog against the digital sound. The warmth of the analog was but the pristine of the digital, and like I said, you can hear delays and reverbs. You can hear those the depth and the tails of them a little more. But it was cool, fun experiment.
Yeah, no lie. And I really had no idea that the Sweetwater Studios were, as big and predominant and working and just as large and professional as you're describing them to be.
Yeah, it's pretty darn state of the art with speakers and microphones and everything. Because all the vendors, since Sweetwater sells that stuff, they want to be. They want to make sure the studio is completely up to speed on their newest and latest and greatest. And the engineer there is a Nashville guy that moved up there, Mark Hornsby, and he's just fantastic. Great producer, great engineer. And I started a big trend because since I did my record there, my first one, the Grand Design, Robin Ford came down, Oz Noy came down.
Wow.
And he's doing a record there. Robin's done 2 projects there so far. And let me see, they've got Peter Erskine did a record there, the drummer.
Yeah.
And Eric Johnson's coming in next week, and he's on the road right now. He's going to record something there.
Actually, just saw him last night.
Oh, with the Avia Musicom tour?
Yes. Yeah,
isn't that great? I saw it too. And when I went backstage to say hi, he goes, "Man, if I'd seen you earlier, I was going to ask you to sit in." And I said, that would have been fun. Because we played together at a festival last June and just had a ball, man. That guy's so cool.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that whole recording at the Sweetwater thing, I mean, like you were saying, all their suppliers, that they're a vendor for, want everything to be state of the art. And, okay, we used this new thing on this album or this release, this recording, whatever. And it amazed me that they actually had you bring all your gear in instead of using stuff that's in-house. I thought for sure it's like, okay, we'll come in and we'll use all the new stuff here, all the new technology. We use modeling and we'll use digital this and no, but Carl got to have a truck and a trailer full of gear come in. That is awesome.
Yeah, it's very nice that they did that. And then when I went back and did my my blues record, I just shipped a 1968 50-watt Plexi Marshall back there, and they had a Vox AC30 cabinet that's open back and sounds really good with that amp. Because I had tried it before, and I said, yeah, give me that open back Vox cabinet so I don't have to ship back speaker cabinets,
Sure.
And so that's how I did the blues album. I brought my signature Strat from LSL. And LSL makes this thing called a Soledad, which is a telly that's like a thin line telly. It's got the F holes that basically has a block of wood down the middle like a 335, but behind the bridge it's a big open area that acts that's this sort of resonant chamber, and that opens to the F holes like a speaker, and it has a P90 and a humbucker in the back, a P90 in the neck and a humbucker in the back. And you wouldn't think those two pickups worked well together, but they really do. They sound fantastic together. So, well,
I mean, a P90 is like, it's like a single coil on steroids, and good ones are just, they're like a large Strat style pickup, which is really cool for that.
On my album Slaying Justice, I play my 54 Les Paul in the neck position. And everybody that hears it thinks it's, how did you get that Strat sound? And I have to break it to them, and I go, no, that's a 1954 Gold Top that
wow,
that I've had for many. I've had since '85.
With P90s, yeah.
Yeah, it's got those P90s and a wraparound bridge. I joined Supertramp in 1985, and they before the rehearsals started, they said, we've got this warehouse full of guitar gear. You might go see what you want out of there. So I went in there. I met the monitor engineer over there. His name is Ian Lloyd Bisley with a hyphen. Ian Lloyd Bisley. So Ian meets me, and I met over there, and I grabbed a chorus, an old Boss chorus pedal. I mean, this is 30 years ago, right? Yeah, wow. 1985, 33 years ago. I grabbed one of those Boss Chorus pedals and maybe some guitar stands, and then they had these two Mesa Boogie Mark II amps, and I took them both home, and I listened to them, and one sounded pretty good, and the other one was not so good. So I took it down to this place in L.A., and, 85 is before vintage became really expensive. It's a little bit before. It started getting expensive at the end of the 80s, but I took it down there, and they go to this place called Guitar in L.A. here on Ventura Boulevard, Sherman Oaks. And I said, hey, I'd like to trade this for something. And the guy goes, okay, what do you want? And I went over and I grabbed this 54 Les Paul off the wall. It sounded great. He got the original brown case and traded me straight across. And I don't know what those Mark IIs are going for now.
Wow.
But man, I was insuring that as of a few years ago anyway. I was insuring the Les Paul for $50,000. I think now it's only about $30,000, but still it's a.
I can pretty much assure you that those two Mark IIBs or Mark IIs, whatever they were are not worth 30 or 40 or $50,000.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. So
yeah.
Anyway.
Wow, that's pretty cool. That is pretty cool. Supertramp. Is that still going on?
Well, so we had a massive tour planned for, I think it was 2015, and maybe it was 2016. Yeah, it was 2016, and we had 36 arenas completely sold out, and this was going to be all in Europe. And that was for, October, November. And then September was kind of blocked for at least a couple weeks in September for rehearsals and everything. And on the first week of August, we got a call saying tour canceled because the leader of the band is a dear friend and a real mentor of mine. Rick Davies is his name. He picked up cancer. He got cancer. And it's a nasty cancer, multiple myeloma, which I don't believe you can ever cure. You can just maintain. And anyway, he unfortunately, they had to cancel that entire tour, which was so devastating.
I bet.
Yeah, real heavy. But he's doing fine. He takes, I guess, a steroid and a chemo treatment once a month, and he says he feels like $1 million because the steroid makes him feel so good, but he doesn't quite have the energy to ramp up a big tour. I mean, he's in his mid-70s now.
Wow.
And, or getting there, So,
yeah, it would have to
so
be.
I think the touring part of it is really over, which is such a shame because it's a great bunch of guys and a great catalog of music to play. And man, yeah, it's a shame. So.
Wow, really sorry to hear that. All the best to him.
Yeah,
sure.
I know. I owe him a call. I just did a little vacation down in Mexico with my wife, and I got back and put first thing on my calendar. I put, I got to call Rick, so see how he's doing. So.
Wow. Well, I'm sure everyone listening sends their best.
Yeah, he's a great guy. We did a tour a couple years ago, my band, from Seattle down to L.A., hitting about 5 different places, Yoshi's in Oakland and a place in Sacramento, and I guess it was the Buck Owens Crystal Palace in Bakersfield. And everywhere I went, I brought this big poster of Rick, and I said to the audience, because my band will occasionally play Bloody Well Right, the old Supertramp song. I've got like a slide guitar version of it. It's real swampy. And I said, Rickson got cancer, and I want to send this to him. So I got 2,000 signatures on it. We put it over at the merch table, and 2,000 people signed it or more. And best wishes, and get help, get well soon, all that stuff. And when the tour was over, I rolled it up and put it in a tube and sent it to him, and he told me he's got it framed in his.
Wow.
He's got this hallway downstairs by his studio, and he lives in East Hampton, in the Hamptons out there, Long Island. He said he framed it, and I've been down that hallway, and there's like probably 50 gold records and the keys to all these cities and, recognition awards and all this stuff. And for my little poster of him to be framed is a real honor.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah.
I mean, quite honestly, that could very well mean more to him than, any of the gold records and the keys,
It might, yeah, I know.
That's,
yeah,
that's from the heart, man.
Yeah, that many fans of mine are big fans of him. So,
well, of course, I mean, you've been one and the same since. What'd you say?
85.
85, right?
Yeah, that's a long time.
That's a really long time. What was I going to ask you? Any cool new gear that we need to know about? Any Carl Verheyen anything or anything that you've run into that you really dig?
Well, at the NAMM show, I was over at those T-Rex guys' booth, and
Okay.
I played their new tape delay. They make sort of an Echoplex type deal, and they now make a junior version, which means the only difference between that and the original they made was you can't get slapback and delay and longer repeats at the same time. And that's fine with me. I don't care. Anyway, they sent me one, and it is amazing. I mean, it's like an Echoplex, except it's much more. It's a true tape delay.
Yes, it is.
But it's got a little cassette that they make, and they give you 2 cassettes in case your one wears out. And they even give you Q-tips because they tell you that you should clean it after X amount of hours of use.
Mm-hmm.
And, man, I've been really loving that. I've been using it a lot. And I don't think I would put it on a pedal board because it seems a bit on the fragile side, even though it does have tap tempo. It even has tap tempo. But, there's just something about tape delay, the real thing, that no digital delay pedal or even analog delay, that bucket brigade kind of technology, there's nothing like it. It's really different. And this thing's kind of it's not sonically noisy because you don't hear any noise coming through your amp because I've used it in the studio so far.
Wow, that's really cool.
But when it's sitting over there, like I've had it in my own little home studio sitting over there on the counter, and you hear it going.
You hear it running.
Yeah, you hear it running, and you just kind of go, man, hope that's not coming through the amp, and it isn't, thankfully. But man, what a nice sounding box that is! It really knocks me out.
Well, so the smaller one they made, obviously they removed one of the playback heads, I would think.
I guess that's all it is. Yeah.
Yeah, because if you can't get slapback and long echo, that's because one of those has to be missing. But
yeah,
you got to reduce size and cost. You got to reduce size and cost somewhere, if you're going to make it smaller and cheaper.
So, it is smaller, and the smallness of it is hip. It's really good. I like the size. It's like a big pedal, but like I said, I would probably be the guy that puts it on the rack drawer instead of on the floor, because it just feels kind of fragile, even though it's built like a tank. It's pretty happening. So,
well, that's probably why they give you 2 little tape cassettes in case you happen to crush one on the floor.
Yeah, stomp one. Yeah,
Right.
And so yeah,
but
I
you
really
probably
like
can't
that
do that
guy.
with them. They probably have it so that's really not too possible. I would imagine.
Yeah, it's in a real hard plastic housing, the cassette part of it.
Yeah.
So.
That's really cool, man. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I remember when the first ones came out. It's like, wow, this is really nice, and it was smaller than an Echoplex.
Mm-hmm.
Not inexpensive, but it's like, oh, this is really cool. Because the only thing up to that point that I knew of that was really tape were the I think Fulltone had reissued their version of the Echoplex, I think the EP3.
And people liked that one. People really thought that was cool.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I never tried one of those. And that guy Fuller, what's his first name? I can't remember, but he lives in my neighborhood.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Or not? He lives in Topanga Canyon, not exactly in my neighborhood, but he's not too far away.
But close enough. If you're like me and you're 3,000 miles from you, yeah, it's in your neighborhood.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's all relative, man. It's all relative.
I know.
That's really cool. Any new guitars happening for
Well,
you?
let's see. I mean, I've been using my. I got a good example of everything. I mean, really, of all the important guitars you need, I really over the years have collected great ones and a lot of vintage stuff and everything else. But my latest newest acquisition was that LSL Soledad Telly, and that's the one with the P90 and the humbucker, and I use that quite a bit. But I've recently gone down to LSL. Actually, it was a week ago Monday, and I said, okay, we've been making the CV Special, which is my signature Strat through those guys, and the signature Strat that I have is basically a nice lightweight Strat with my vibrato bar. My specifications of how I want that set up, my specifications of how I want the volume and tone set up, my action height, and especially, most importantly, is my weight. I really like guitars that are not any heavier than 7.3 pounds, total with everything on it, the block and everything in it. So they make the CV Special, and they make two versions, and I said, it's time we make a maple neck version, because I've been playing my maple neck Strats, of which I've got a fairly newer one, like a 97, but I also have a 58, and that thing is feather light, and it just sounds amazing. And I go through phases, as I'm sure a lot of guitar players do, where they're just loving their rosewood necks, and then they play a maple and they sort of see the neck differently, and they sort of feel it and kind of they play it differently. I know that's just in your brain. I know that's psychological, but there's something going on there to where I sort of play differently on a maple neck. So these two instruments that I have, the 58 and the 97, have slightly slimmer necks, and I tend to just be able to burn on them. You know how a wider, fatter neck is something you can chord on better, and you can play in the style of Chet Atkins and finger pick better. But a skinnier neck, like I have on my 66 SG, for instance, man, you can shred on those things. I mean, you can really burn. And I don't know what that is, but anyway, I've been playing these maple neck guitars some, and realizing not only do I see things different and I can really shred on it, but on the other hand, with distortions, sometimes it feels like it's a little more focused to me. You know what I mean?
Okay,
the sound is a little more focused.
A maple neck is a bit brighter, so maybe that helps cut through the distortion of things a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't know what it is, but maybe it's the brightness of it, and you can always get rid of treble, that's for sure. Sure. So,
I mean, it's, a lot of times you may find a guitar that isn't spanky enough, doesn't have enough treble, and that's kind of hard to put back in.
Yeah.
No,
it's easier to get rid of treble than to add it.
For sure. Yeah, if it comes out of the instrument, it's much better. But,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, like the SG, I mean, but that's a whole different scale, too. You're saying it's thinner and you can shred on it. That's a whole different scale, too. It's a little shorter and probably a little faster for you.
Yeah. Those are fun. Those are just fun to pick up and play,
Right.
So.
Now, is it, not only neck width, but is the neck relatively thin on that one? I've played a lot of SGs probably in that era that the neck is relatively thin, like front to back.
Yeah, it's a little bit. It's not too thin though.
Okay, cool.
This one is front to back isn't too thin. It's just the width of the neck is a little bit skinny, and it takes you a minute to warm up to it. I used to have all kinds of, in my 20s and 30s. Oh yeah, I got to play Gibson scale, and I want to get a Strat built with Gibson scale. And then one day you just kind of wake up and you go, you know what? I can play anything with strings on it. Just bring it, and I'm not worried about it. And you just kind of wake up and go, yeah, I just adapt in 30 seconds to a minute, and all of a sudden, it doesn't matter scale length or thickness of neck or anything. So. So, speaking
of thickness, what gauge strings do you typically use? And is it the same on Gibsons and Fenders? And
Yeah, I mean,
scales?
what I've been doing for many years is because I do this balanced bridge thing with my Strats, in that my G string can be, when I pull up on the bar, my G string goes up a minor third, my B string goes up a whole step to C sharp, and my E string, my high E string goes up to F. So G goes up to minor third, B flat, and then C sharp, then F. So I know where I'm going when I pull up, and it also goes down. So in order to get the optimum spring tension against string tension, I've settled on a set that is a hybrid set that's 9, 11, 16 on the top.
Okay.
And then 26, 37, 46 on the bottom. And I'm trying to get DR, the guys at DR, to make that set. And they're making it for me, but I'm trying to get it to bring it to market, because everybody asks me what strings you're using, what gauge you're using, and I got to tell them, well, I get these guys to do this for me, and I think they're going to do it real soon. We just had some talks right around NAMM, and they're getting ready to do it. But yeah, I mean, I was with Tomastic Infeld strings for years, and those guys are out of Vienna, Austria, and they were just so cool. And but they make most of their money selling violin and cello and bass and viola strings, orchestral stuff. So having said that, when the boss Peter Infeld died, the bean counters seemed to take over, and they really limited their guitar program. I mean, I think they still sell a George Benson string, but the Carl Verheyen strings disappeared. Well, they didn't really. I mean, they just got too hard to find in the States, and people were not really into ordering them from Europe,
Right.
guitar strings. So, long story short, that went away. I went to Dean Markley for a while, but maybe 6 months after I joined the Dean Markley guys, and Dean was super cool and really interested in making it happen, he sold the company to some other people, and that kind of went away. The cool people seemed to leave, and I shouldn't say that, because I'm sure there's very cool people working there now. But
the familiar people.
Yeah, they seem to kind of lose interest in it. So I was riding in an elevator. I think it was at NAMM a year ago, and these people were talking about the Disney California Adventure. And they were talking about riding the Tower of Terror, and it's a ride at Disneyland, right? So these guys are talking about that. Oh yeah, the Tower of Terror, and I said, did you hear the music was the Twilight Zone theme? I just butt in, and said, and we're going up the elevator at the Marriott or something, and the guy goes, no, it was a lady. She goes, yeah, it was the Twilight Zone. I said, well, that was me. I played on that. I played on that track for the ride, and they actually got out the original Bernard Herrmann score, and we were reading off the old score paper. They didn't even reprint it. It was yellowed and funky looking. And the most amazing thing, it was me and another guitar player, and the most amazing thing was that there's a pickup note. So you've heard all your life, you've been hearing. It isn't that. It's 1, 2, 3, 4. In other words, the second note is the downbeat. And man, we were blown away that that's the way he heard it. Da 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 da. We've always heard it da 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 da.
Right. It's inverted.
Yeah. So
wow.
It was really a real funny realization, because you realize that it's just one of those things that the composer heard it completely different than the rest of humanity, and we could barely read it. There's a bunch of other stuff that comes later, and we were hearing it wrong, so we were always in the wrong place when the reading had to keep going, continue. So oh man, we had to kind of we had to almost start over. Hard to say. I know there was different bars and different time changes and stuff. It was a really interesting piece of music. I forget all the stuff that was happening, but crazy.
That is fascinating. That truly is fascinating.
So on that elevator was the president of DR Strings, and he knew who I was, and so I said, hey, I never tried your strings, so they sent me some, and they're really, really high quality. I mean, they're a small company that really cares, you know. So
that's very cool. Wow,
yeah.
that whole theme scenario is just that's mind-boggling. That's fantastic, man. That is awesome.
Yeah, it's too funny.
Yeah. Speaking of strings, then I have to ask you about something else. But strings, someone had told me a little while back that they were using a special set of strings. Like they're not really available anymore. But there's a special set of strings that supposedly was recommended. I don't know. Think I could say developed, but recommended for Strats in order for them to sound balanced and for the vibrato to stay to work well, to stay in pitch, to come back and everything. And it was like 9 to 38 or something like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
And who was doing that? You said Fender?
No, a friend of mine, but the packs of strings had come from Fender at some point. And he had purchased a large quantity of them, of packs of these strings. But supposedly that's what was recommended way back in the day for a Fender with a vibrato on it.
Interesting. Yeah, that surprises me because that is really, really light. But you know what? I'm a firm believer that it's not about string gauge as much as it's about action height. That's where tone comes from. If you can have, people are telling me, oh yeah, I use 11s because an 11 set because I want to sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan and get that big fat tone. And I tell them I can get that big fat tone with a 9. I just don't have my action down on the deck, so it's all buzzy and and clanky and tinny. So I think it has a lot more to do with action height than string gauge.
Yeah, I think you get a little bit more out of it if you have to fight it a little bit more, because you have to put more into it and some more comes out of it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, if you really want to be Stevie, you're not going to get it with 11s, man. The man used 13s,
Yeah, not only that, but nobody will ever be that guy again.
No.
Nobody will sound like that guy ever again. He just had some hands of steel and just was living it, man. That guy was so amazing. I got to meet him a couple of times. Really great guy.
Yeah, he was a really good guy. I had begun to do some nice work with him before he passed.
Oh, great! Good for you.
Yeah, I built an amp for him and a couple of really cool 4x12s, and I used to give Renee the Fuzz Face Repro boards that I did. I was doing Fuzz Face Repros before even Dunlop put the reissue out. I think, like the original reissue years ago. And he would get them so he could rebuild Stevie's because after you solder on the board so many times, the traces lift off. And I had the same board layout and everything, so he used to get those from me.
Wow.
Yeah, but that was really cool. And I mean, the reason he used 13s is because he was, his hands, they're like sledgehammers, and no other strings would hold up. So he had to go with what worked with his passion of playing. I'm sure that's what it was.
And tuning down to E flat loosens things up a little bit, but still 13s are a workout, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I got them on my slide guitar, and man, you're not bending very far with those.
No, I did find even down tuning a half top because I put 13s on one of my Strats when I was working on the amp for him because 13s are way different than playing an amp with 11s or 10s. And that's very different. But
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. It's sonically, there's just so much more happening. But
yeah, wow.
It's even down tuned a half step. It was still like playing piano wire. But the thing that I found, and I don't want to carry on about this, but the thing I found, what his secret was, and Renee will probably tell you this too, big frets. Big frets made all the difference in the world with 13s.
Yeah, big tall frets, huh? And wide.
Wide. I was graced with the ability to play number one once when I was working on his amps at a venue, And I'm telling you, man, that thing played like it had somewhere between 10s and 11s on it.
Wow.
It was crazy.
Just because the frets were so big, yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy. So
that's interesting. That's really cool.
That was my experience with that. But
I found in studio work, the big wide frets are harder to intonate. You know, if you're doing intricate chords and stuff like that. I mean, Stevie was not that guy doing chords with minor seconds in them and stuff like that, or big intervals in them. So he didn't have to worry about it. But I find a tall, skinny fret works a lot better for just intonating way up the neck.
Absolutely, especially if there's any kind of keys involved, because that's when it really has to be right.
Yeah, exactly.
So one more thing I wanted to ask you about, CV Academy. Mm-hmm. What is that? How is that working?
Yeah, it's interesting. So what happened was a buddy of mine came to me. I mean, actually a student of mine, a guy that had taken a few lessons, and he's a real gypsy jazz fanatic, and he wanted to learn some other things. He came to me and said, "Hey, would you ever consider doing this?" And he goes, "I have a little film studio at my house." And I thought about it for a long time, and I thought about all the other people that are doing it. And then I realized a way to make it right, a way to do something different would be to just take all the influences I've ever had in terms of players and say, here's what I learned from. And do 5 to 10 minute videos of that, like the artistic signatures of every one of these guys. And there's probably 50 or more players through the years. And, it can be Roger McGuinn and Eric Clapton. It can be Lenny Breau. It can be Chet Atkins. It can be Albert King. It can be Albert Lee. It could be Mike Bloomfield. It can be, just all those guys through the years. And there's country guys, and there's rock guys, and there's then Wes Montgomery and Pat Martino, jazz guys, slide guys, and then horn players too. Sonny Rollins, John Coltrane, Miles Davis. Anybody who's and if you distill that one thing that you got from this guy, you've listened to him, Duane Allman, all these years, but what's that one thing that he does that's something that you've incorporated into your playing? So I did that, but we were originally going to call this thing the Lick Book Academy, because I've been keeping a lick book, kind of a musical diary since the 70s, and I got maybe 36 volumes of just note paper with musical ideas in it, lines, Wow. A great line for A minor, a great line for C major, a great line for F7, and I mean, I'm adding to this thing all the time, many volumes, like I say. I've got the current volume. I wrote 2 new ideas down this morning, and that just in practicing. And so that's another thing, like here's an idea for F minor 7th that starts on the low F on the first fret of the 6th string and ends up on a high C, the second to last note on a strat, on the high E string. Wow. Or here's a line in just F minor pentatonic that starts on the 13th fret and drops all the way down to here, So just ideas, just lines. And I decided instead of getting into a heavy theory, although I do have basics, like here are the modes and here are the scales. And I've got that just so if you're really new at this stuff, before you get into the lines and the pentatonics and the Dorian mode and the Mixolydian stuff and country licks, you have the basics. You can go look up the basics, and I explain that real simply. But I've got well over 100, maybe 120 of these short little videos of either what I learned from or lines and, different lick book example number 25, that kind of thing. But then I also have about 5 or 6 master classes, because there's an online forum and people saying, hey, can you explain to me how you do that song of yours called On Our Way? And I go, yeah. And it's just take an hour to explain how I wrote it, what gear I used, what the inspiration was, how I play these kind of harmonics, all that stuff. And that was a really cool thing to do too. So there's about 5 or 6 master classes. So every month I'm adding 10 of the new short lessons, and one of the master classes. So
wow.
One of the longer ones.
That's really cool.
I mean,
really interesting.
Yeah, it's only got about 50 people signed up right now, but it's growing every month. As people find out about it, they're signing up. And the cool thing is it's a PayPal deal. It's $29 a month. And you can kind of come and go. You can stay in for 2 or 3 months and then get a bunch of stuff to work on and then come back next summer, that kind of thing,
Oh,
so
cool.
It's pretty fun. All over the world, too. I toured in Italy over the summer, and all of a sudden, like 12 more people signed up, and then I think that happens, too. I go out and I tour, and then people are see me, and then they find out about it, so that's kind of fun. I've been enjoying that.
That is really cool, and I think it's a really cool and unique way to learn some things, instead of having to go through every step of, modes and scales and things like that, which is not bad, and you should, I should too, but it's something where you can just who is calling me? It's something where you can just go to a particular kind of thing that you want to learn. It's like, okay, I'm playing this song, or I'm writing this kind of song, and I'd really like to sound like fill in the blank. And Carl's probably got something on CV Academy. It's like, okay, well, this is what I derived from this player and this kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And it's just okay. Now I can apply this.
Yeah, and it's grouped into things like blues, jazz, fusion, country. So it might say, here's what I learned from Chet Atkins, and it's in the here's what I learned from file, but you can also access it from the country file, that kind of thing. So and there's lots and lots of them. And like I said, we're adding new ones, and I really enjoy it because I'll be listening to the radio and hear an Elton John song and go, or a Brian Wilson Beach Boys song and go, man, that the way he modulates from the key of D to the key of E in a song like God Only Knows is such an interesting way of using chords and stuff. I mean, of harmony, that I might even do a lesson on what I learned from Brian Wilson, and it's not to do with anything about playing my guitar. It's much more about songwriting and stuff like that. So anyway, I really enjoy it because part of us geezers, part of the older generation of guitar players, which I'm fast approaching, is to pass it down to the next generation so they don't turn into just typers and they actually experience the sheer joy of hearing the notes in the air when they play their instrument. And I think that's a real important responsibility for guys like me to just, make sure it's out there for people to learn from. And a lot of stuff on the internet, especially a lot of the freebie stuff, is just wrong. There's a lot of wrong stuff. So
yeah, and I'm really happy you said that about passing it on, like paying it forward kind of thing. Mick and I have this conversation all the time, and we've thrown around a couple ideas to try to figure out how to somehow be a force or a motivating factor into getting music like back into the schools and into the kids' ears and hands, because it does have the potential to change lives. But I just think overall it just makes for a better, more well-rounded person that I think it just increases one's appreciation for things. And just to be able to make some sound of your own, that could change somebody's life. It has, and it should. And your self-esteem and everything else. And people sort of like when people ask me, why do you bring a guitar on vacation? Why do you play every single day? Well, I believe that I really find my center as a person when I'm able to practice. That you're getting better and you're working on yourself and you're working on and it makes you happy and there's meaning to it. It's meaningful and you can plan your day around it and follow that plan and it adds value to the day. I think that's really important. And I think that's fantastic, man. And what you want to get away from is the business. You don't want to necessarily get away from the music.
Right, I know.
You
For
know?
many years, I kept no computer in my studio. I didn't want a fax machine or a computer or anything to do with business. And so I tried to have like a separate office, you know. And, you know, now that I've got to have a home studio with a Pro Tools rig and stuff, yeah, there's a big-ass computer in there. But, you know, it's not – I don't want to be distracted by email and spreadsheets for the next tour or anything like that. I want to just go in there and play my music, you know. Play.
Yeah, I hear you, man. I hear you. And speaking of next tour, you're gearing up for a European tour, I see.
Yeah, I got a little Europe run. I'm going to do Lithuania, which I've done twice so far. Those people are – it's really fun. They really love music, and you know, we landed there. We've done it with backline gear. You know, the gear that I keep in Europe is let's see, I've got 2 Fender Twins and a couple of Marshalls and a Dr. Z over there, and a couple of 4x12 cabinets. And so all I have to do is bring. Oh, and I keep an SG over there too. So all I have to do is bring my Strat and a pedal board that runs that rig. You know. So, but when we go way up there to Lithuania in the is that the Baltics? Yeah, I use backline gear, and the first time I showed up.
Uh-oh.
See that?
So, yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I hit a button.
That's cool.
Oh, wait a minute. No. I'm sorry. I have to give me 20 minutes. I'm on the phone with somebody else, and I mistakenly dialed you. Give me 20 minutes.
Cool.
All right, bye.
Yeah, thank you. Bye. So, you know,
Carl,
kind of this big, huge Russian guy.
Carl, I accidentally, Mick's going to have to edit this out. I accidentally hit a button on my phone. And from where you said I showed up in Europe or something like that. I showed up at the airport in Lithuania. Yes. If we could go from there.
Okay. So we showed up at the airport in Lithuania. This big Russian promoter guy takes us out to this fabulous tour bus, turns on the radio, and it was me, you know, on the radio. And I said, "Hey, that's me." And he said, "Of course, I own the radio station." And I said, "How are the gigs? How are the theaters selling out? They're selling." And he goes, "Oh, they're all sold out. Been sold out for months." You know, so it's really fun to go up there and play. And then we go to Italy, and we go to Germany, the Netherlands, possibly one fly date over to Finland, and then we end up at this thing called the Schorndorf Guitar Festival, which I've done twice in the past, which is a week-long thing. So
wow.
that'll be fun.
That's great, man. Yeah, my wife's cousin is in Italy right now doing some touring, and you know all the European fans are they're great fans, man. They just seem to get music so much more. Than
yeah, I mean, and it's you can really see their appreciation of American jazz, blues, jam type music, the stuff that Americans sort of made, you know, the indigenous art form of our people.
Right.
You know, they really appreciate that. And Italy, man, once I went to Italy 4 times a year for 3 years in a row. You know, whether it was an acoustic solo tour for 2 weeks and then come back a couple months later for a guitar camp, which I was teaching at, come back a couple months later with my band, and then come back again for a festival or two. And, you know, they just love the guitar over there, and they love the sort of American approach to it, especially. So,
well, that's really cool. And, you know, they love the guitar and they get to see some acts, but you know, I think they're very well graced by getting to see Carl Verheyen, because honestly, man, you know, this is just straight up honest. You're one of the best players I know. Oh
man, thanks so much, Jeff. I sure appreciate that.
Oh, it's
been a ball talking to you.
Likewise, man. Thanks for being on with us again, and you know, telling us all about the CV Academy, and you know, everybody that listens to this in Europe, if Carl comes around, if you haven't seen him before, you got to see him. You know, and just everything else we've touched on today, man. It's just, you know, it's great to have you back on the show, and much continued success, safe travels, and just have a great rest of the day, my friend.
Great. Thanks so much, Jeff. I sure appreciate it.
It's all good, Carl. Right back at you, man.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take care.
All
Bye-bye.
right. Bye. And there you have the story.
Yeah, man.
You know, it's he never stops moving forward. You know, there's always, you know, things that he's moving in different directions all the time, and I think it's really cool. And you know, the fact that he's been with Supertramp so long now. It's you know, he's probably been with them longer than the original guitarist.
That's a weird thing, isn't it? You know, it's like Steve Morse has been in Deep Purple longer. Zakk Wylde has played longer with Ozzy than anybody else.
And I just saw a cover of Guitar World, Guitar Player, or something like that, of Ozzy and Zakk are going back
doing
out
the final Ozzy tour.
No More Tours 2.
Well, Sharon dictates what Ozzy's going to do, so you know.
Yeah, exactly. So you know, he put Sabbath to sleep, and now this, you know. But I think I think the 2 is not only that it's the second time he's done the No More Tours tour, but it's also a 2-year thing. They're not going to wrap until 2020. Yeah.
You know, wow. I because I wasn't in the interview, but you know, we this was a NAMM connection because we were standing there watching Steve Morse, Albert Lee, Sterling Ball, and Hunter Hayes, and that other gentleman, I forget his name, and I apologize. They were just killing it as you know, their little string thing that they've always done, and Carl came right up. I think he came right up to you, didn't he? And he was like, "Hey, Jeff." And we're like, what the hell? It was like Carl Verheyen standing right there, and that's So it was. I
mean, it you know, my meeting him was at a NAMM years ago.
That is just too funny.
It was either at NAMM or at a NAMM show at the Baked Potato. It was one or the other, but I mean, it was years and years ago where I first met him. And,
it's always nice, you know. That show is always, you know, we walked 37 miles in 4 days, and
that's true.
Never really left the building too much, and it's like the stimulus, you know, the sound and everything else, and it's exhausting. It really is. And then when when you run into somebody that you haven't seen, it's like, oh man, well now I know why we do this. you know, because it's like it's very refreshing, especially meet somebody like Carl, because he's just such a down to earth guy.
He really is. He totally is.
I mean,
and just that's killer player.
You play for Supertramp. Those guys could play on the Sun. 500 people would show up.
Yeah, but I mean, just go see him and his band. It's ridiculous, man. I loved him the first time I saw him.
Yeah.
So very cool.
So until next time, my friend.
That's right, because, you know, it may be a recurring guest. It may be somebody new that you know.
Exactly, because I don't know
who
it is.
Tuning in. That's right.
I'm Mick Marcelino.
That's right, you are. And I still am Jeff Bober.
And we're always saying,
onward.
Be sure and follow the show on Twitter @AmpsandAxes. Also, make sure you like the show on Facebook. For news, comments, and everything else, visit the webpage ampsandaxescast.com. Thanks for listening.